Welcome to Weather Extra. I'm meteorologist Jillian Johnson. We had our fair share of wild weather this past week. Not so much in the precipitation department, but we sure did see some wild swings in our temperatures here in central Texas. But across the nation, numerous storm systems swept through over the past week, dumping heavy rain and snow and causing travel impacts along both coasts. Here's a look back at the past week's top weather stories. More than 20 million Americans across the Northeast and New England states started the work week off with a winter storm watch. A powerful nor'easter swept through states like Connecticut, New Hampshire, New York, and even up into Massachusetts. Many areas picked up a foot or more of snow, including West Hartford, Connecticut, where more than 15 inches fell. New York City also saw its snowiest single day since January 29th of 2022, with a total of 3.2 inches falling on Tuesday. Heavy snow and low visibility caused major travel impacts through the Northeast as well. Over 2,000 flights were canceled early last week, and across the state of Pennsylvania, so many vehicles became stuck due to the heavy snow that snowplows couldn't even get onto the roads to help. The weight of the heavy snow, along with some strong winds, caused many Americans to lose power, as the heavy, wet snow brought down power lines across the region. At one point, there were nearly 150,000 without power. Strong wind gusts also blasted the northeast coastline. Winds on the northern edge of the storm gusted up to 45 miles per hour. The strength of the winds also churning fierce waves that crashed into this seawall in a town in Massachusetts. While the nor'easter moved off land, another fast-moving storm system was moving out of Canada and tearing through the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, and would eventually bring more wintry weather to the Northeast late in the work week. In Minneapolis, nearly 7 inches of snow fell on Valentine's Day, setting a new daily snow record for the holiday. The old record was set back in 1950. Before the storm, the city was experiencing its least snowiest winter to date, but even after this past week's round of snow, they still remain more than 20 inches below average for snowfall so far this year. Across parts of the Great Lakes, strong winds and lake effect snow became an issue Thursday into Friday. Another round of heavy snow, more than a foot in some locations, fell along with winds gusting up to 50 miles per hour. The storm system would strengthen as it lifts northeast late in the week, bringing another round of snow showers and strong winds through New England, causing additional widespread travel issues. Now over to the West Coast, who also had its fair share of severe weather throughout the month so far. In fact, California has had no time to dry out after last week's atmospheric river events, as an additional parade of storms have had their eyes set upon the Golden State. The Pacific Coast saw the first of 3 powerful storm systems arrive on Valentine's Day. Thankfully, the first storm didn't cause any flooding across coastal California, but wet roads did lead to some minor travel delays across the state. Now, heavy snow did occur across parts of Oregon, Washington, and even across the higher terrain of the Cascades in California, where between 1 to 2 feet of new snow fell within storm system number 1. 2 more powerful storm systems will be moving through the West Coast into the early parts of this new week. The second out of the 3 moved out of the Gulf of Alaska and has been bringing round 2 of rain and snow across the West Coast this weekend, increasing the flooding concern, especially across the state of California. But the final and most impactful storm, system number 3, will be moving east out of the Pacific as we head into the new work week, where strong winds, heavy rain, and snow could cause more flooding and power outages and bring additional damage to the state of California. Well, the countdown is on for a once-in-a-lifetime event here in Central Texas. A total solar eclipse will travel right through our area on Monday, April 8th. That's only 50 days away from today. All of Central Texas is preparing for crowds of people and a boom in business as thousands are expected to come here for this special day. News 10's Isabella Quintanilla has more on how a smaller Central Texas town is preparing for this celestial event.
With a population of just over 400, Evant, Texas is one of the many small towns in Central Texas getting ready for the solar eclipse. And with them being located on U.S. Route 281, which goes all the way from the Canadian to Mexican border, they are expecting a lot of traffic on April 8th.
We're going to be inundated by traffic not only from the north, but from the south and the east and the west. People traveling through, maybe they'll stop here and maybe they won't, but they're coming through.
Evant already doesn't have school the day of the eclipse, but there might not be any local businesses open either.
We don't have the amount of people to staff for a crowd like that.
However, their main concern now is making sure everyone is safe.
Chuck and I both, we went down to Uvalde for the annular eclipse to prepare. We've talked to all the Department of Emergency Managements in the counties around us. And right now, what our biggest concern is being able to get law enforcement.
Like everyone else, they're worried people won't be able to reach 911, and even if they can, traffic along the roads could make things more difficult.
It's 16 miles to Hamilton to get an ambulance here and 25 from Gatesville to get an ambulance here, if you can call 911.
As a backup plan, they have a communication plan in place among city officials.
We're probably going to implement two-way radios that we will be able to communicate with the city officials and the fire department officials and keep those lines of communication open.
Hamilton County has been helping the city of Event with preparation for the eclipse, but they're still hoping for help from the state. For now, they're working on sharing information with residents so they're prepared as well.
Switching gears now to a new study published in the journal Nature that says more cities are being built in high flood risk areas. The report says from 1985, extending over 3 decades, settlements in flood-prone areas increased by a whopping 122%. Researchers looked at global flood hazard and annual settlement footprint data to understand the populations most affected by flood risk. They found that as the world's settlement grew by 85%, urbanization happened much faster in high hazard flood zones. Researchers say exposure to all types of flooding is increasing, but they note vulnerability to coastal flooding is increasing at the fastest pace. East Asia and the Pacific region were the places with the highest exposure to flooding. Now, some of the high flood-prone areas in the United States are along the nation's coastline, with Florida, Louisiana, and even some parts of Texas making it to the top of the list. We all know that one of the greatest threats to cause significant coastal flooding can be tropical systems. With hurricane season less than 4 months away, the National Hurricane Center is preparing to bring out an experimental tropical cyclone forecast cone graphic. With more on that, here's meteorologist Sean Bellafiore.
We still do have the second half of the wintertime season left to go, but we are fast approaching the start of the 2024 hurricane season, which officially kicks off on June 1st. It's that time of year where the National Hurricane Center is starting to leak out information about what is going to be happening this season as far as changes to their normal operations. And so far, the only change that they are going to be making is this. And if you don't know what the change is, I don't blame you. It's a very small and subtle one, but it's one that hopefully will actually make a pretty big impact. This is the National Hurricane Center's normal forecast cone. And as we zoom in a little bit closer, you can see that, of course, all of Florida for what was Hurricane Ian covered in tropical storm watches, hurricane watches, and warnings. That's the change. In years past, up until this year, the National Hurricane Center on their official forecast graphics has not put in inland tropical storm watches and warnings and hurricane watches and warnings. So this is what the new cone will look like in the new graphics around August 15th. This is Hurricane Ian as it was back in 2022. You can see, of course, all of Florida's peninsula, even though they're under hurricane warnings and hurricane watches, that was not filled in. Now, the 2024 hurricane season is going to feature this cast of characters, hopefully not the entire list, but it is shaping up to be a very active hurricane season. One of the reasons for that, sea surface temperatures in the main development region are already at that threshold of 80 degrees or above for tropical storm development, and a good chunk of the Atlantic Ocean is experiencing warmer than normal sea surface temperatures. But we actually have to look to the Pacific Ocean for the key to what is likely going to be a very active hurricane season. The sea surface temperatures are very warm in what is called the El Nino 3.4 region. These warmer than normal sea surface temperatures indicate that an El Nino has formed. It's been ongoing for the past couple of months, but a big change as we move into the hurricane season. We are expecting a 78% chance of neutral conditions, meaning not an El Nino or La Nina, but right in the heart of hurricane season, August, September, and October, it's a 74% chance of a La Nina. And typically, whenever we see La Nina emerge during a hurricane season, that means less wind shear over the Atlantic Ocean, which typically means a greater frequency of tropical storms and hurricanes. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafiore, KWTX News 10.
Thanks, Sean. Straight ahead on Weather Extra, global warming is breaching a critical limit. Find out what that means on the other side of this break. Welcome back to Weather Xtra. For the first time on record, new data shows global warming is breaching a critical limit. According to the data from the EU Copernicus program, over the past 12 months, it was 1.52 degrees Celsius hotter on average. That marks the first time on record global warming surpassed 1.5 degrees Celsius within a year. The 2023 average was boosted by January being the hottest on record. The goal of the Paris Agreement signed in 2015 is to keep global warming below 2 degrees, but preferably 1.5. For an explanation on what global warming surpassing the critical limit means, here's CNN's weather anchor, Elisa Raffa.
The latest numbers are in and they tell us that January was the warmest January on record for the globe. 1.6 degrees C above that pre-industrial average makes it the warmest January on record, and it's the 8th month in a row to break its own previous record. Now, this is coming on the heels of the warmest year on record. 2023 was the warmest year the globe has ever seen, 1.4 degrees C above that pre-industrial average. But if you look at the next 12-month period, right, so we want to include January 2024, so that takes us back to February. This 12-month period is now the warmest 12-month period on record. It surpasses that 1.5 degrees C threshold. Now, that number is important because when they all met in Paris, that Paris Climate Agreement, our climate scientists, world leaders, all made that 1.5 degrees C threshold the goal. Let's try not to warm the planet past that. Well, we've done that in the last 12-month period, and it's a sign of where things are headed. The sea surface temperatures were also record warm in January. You can see a lot of red there on the map. The numbers show us that January had a sea surface temperature on average of 20 degrees Celsius, which broke a record for the month. But then you go a couple of days into February, and we've already been warmer than that and broke the previous standing record that was set back in August. Remember when we had that exceptional marine heat wave and we were talking about all of the coral bleaching events that were happening? That was in the heart of the extreme heat season of summer. Well, our February sea surface temperatures have already been warmer than that and broken that record in February. We know that warm ocean temperatures play a role in adding more moisture into the atmosphere and adding more moisture into atmospheric river events like the one that we saw unfold in California this past week. That event dropped a half a year's worth of rain over parts of LA, triggering landslides in the Hollywood Hills, upwards of 400 landslides, destroying homes, cars were stuck. Just an incredible historic event for Southern California. And then you go into Chile, where they've got extreme heat and drought that has fueled the worst wildfire that they've ever seen. Thousands of homes burned, over 100 people killed, and we also know that climate change makes drought conditions like this worse too.
Now, the European Commission is out with a roadmap for slashing carbon pollution by 90% of 1990 levels by 2040. It's one of the most ambitious climate goals in the world. In a concession to European farmers, the Commission took out a section on climate action in the agriculture sector. That section called for a 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture compared to 2015 levels. The EU document sets the goal and outlines how to get there, touching on fossil fuels, transportation, and industry. And the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, has finalized a key update to the federal air quality standard for fine soot. It's a step toward reducing deadly air pollution that's been over a decade in the making. The current standard limits the average annual amount of fine particle pollution to 12 micrograms per cubic meter of air. The EPA is reducing that limit to 9, but that is not enough according to the World Health Organization, which recommends a limit of 5 micrograms. And some major public health groups also agree the new limit is too high, but industry groups describe the new standard as burdensome and difficult to meet. The head of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce says tightening the soot standards threatens economic growth around the nation. Most of us had an X-ray, MRI, or CT scan done, but have you ever thought about the science behind the branch of medicine known as radiology? Well, coming up after the break, we take a look at this week's Degrees of Science with Brady Taylor, who spoke with a radiologist from McLean's Children's Hospital about what goes into radiology. Their conversation is coming up after the break.
Welcome into this week's Degrees of Science. This week we're hitting the road to McLean Children's Hospital and talking with Dr. Krista Birkenmeyer, a radiologist. So, Dr. Birkenmeyer, what, for people that may not know, I mean, people have heard of x-rays and stuff like that, what exactly is the science of radiology?
Right. So radiology is imaging. It's medical imaging to try to help the doctors figure out what's wrong and how we can fix it, and it is vast. A radiologist is a physician, a medical doctor, who then does training in radiology. It's at least 5 years of training. Some people go many more, 5 to 7 years of training after medical school. And so we do the interpreting and we do image-based procedures. Within radiology, then you have different modalities or ways that we can take images. So ultrasound, a lot of people are familiar with ultrasound from, like, say, ultrasounding a baby to see is it a boy or a girl. Well, that may be what what the mom and dad are looking for, but what we're looking for is anatomic abnormalities that might impact birth. Do they have a heart defect? Is there something wrong with the spine? Things that we would need for planning where they're going to be born and what treatment might be needed. That's the one people are most commonly familiar with, but in kids we use ultrasound for so many things, mostly because they're skinny and we can see really good with ultrasound, and it has no radiation, unlike some of the other forms of imaging. Fluoroscopy is another modality where it uses X-rays and sort of a video, and so if we were to do say active procedure, that way they don't have to go to surgery. We can do procedures like joint injections. We can do feeding tube placements, either through the nose or through an area in the abdomen. And we use these X-rays then to guide us to get things in the right spot. We also use fluoroscopy for diagnosis, and so we can have the kids, say, drink barium. Barium is kind of a chalky substance that we can see on our X-ray machine, so we can watch it go down and see how they swallow, look at the esophagus and the stomach, the intestines, or go from below, depending on what the clinical question is that we can answer. X-ray is just like a single X-ray instead of doing a movie like fluoroscopy, and I think most people are familiar with that. X-rays of the chest and the abdomen and the bones. And then we can go to MRI. Now, MRI is a lot more technologically advanced. It uses magnets to make pictures, so it is not radiation. People are always concerned about radiation for good reason. It can add up to potentially cause cancer, so we try to avoid that by doing things like MRI. Now, MRIs take a lot longer, but they provide a lot of good information, and we can do so many things. We can look at the brain, we can look at all the different body parts. CT scan does have radiation, does great imaging, does amazing things, and our CT scanner is actually very cool because it kind of senses the size of the kid and adjusts the radiation dose to be as low as possible to get good images. We use that for a lot of the basic things. We use it for tumors, looking at the lungs for lung nodules. We can use it for appendicitis if we can't see it with the ultrasound. Like I said, it does have a little radiation. One CT scan I don't worry about, but you don't want to have to get multiple CT scans, so we try to divert to MR and ultrasound for those things.
You really see just a wide variety of stuff. Is that fun for you or a little difficult knowing that you've got to keep kind of abreast of all these different types of things that come in your office?
Well, it's definitely challenging but interesting, and I'm always learning, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't want my job to be knowing everything, and I don't know how you could in medicine. But yeah, we, especially in children, in pediatric radiology, you're covering everything. And so I might be looking at a knee MRI for an ACL tear 1 minute, and the next minute a fracture, and the next minute a tumor, and the next minute a neonatal ICU baby's head ultrasound, and I love that. And then we do some specialized things. I do fetal imaging, fetal MRI. And I'm the trained person to do that here, and I just love it. So we actually bring the moms in that are pregnant, and we do scans, and I sit at the scanner with the technologist so that we can kind of problem solve exactly what we need to answer to get the images. It's hard to see babies with problems, but it helps so much to know that I can give them the answers that will help them know the prognosis, help them know what they need for birth.
On an MRI, since you're not using radiation, and it's magnetic, how is the magnetic making it where y'all can see an image inside of there?
Magic. I had to know this for my physics, but you create gradients and magnetic fields, and it goes to a computer that then recapitulates that data into an image, and it's more complex than I can get into for sure.
If it's more complex for you, then it's definitely for me.
To hear more about the science and technology behind radiology in this week's Degrees of Science, scan the QR code right there on your screen to watch on YouTube, or you can go to KWTX.com/degrees of science. Welcome back to Weather Extra. A new study published in the journal Nature, Ecology, and Evolution finds that city life is not for some wild animals, and one thing seems to have the biggest effect. Researchers analyzed photos from 20 North American metropolitan areas. In total, 37 native mammal species were captured on camera, including raccoons, squirrels, rabbits, foxes, cougars, and deer. They found that the animals did better in urban areas that were cooler with plenty of plants and trees. There were also more diverse communities in cities that had less car congestion and concrete. Scientists say cameras could not detect all species, but in general, they say heat is making cities less hospitable to animals. And according to a UN agency report, hundreds of migratory species are now facing extinction because of how humans have altered the earth. Of the nearly 1,200 creatures listed, more than 1 in 5 are threatened. They include species from all sorts of animal groups, including whales, sharks, elephants, wild cats, raptors, birds, and insects. According to the report, the most alarming population declines are seen in the world's migratory fish. 97% are threatened with extinction. The two biggest threats were overexploitation and loss of habitat because of human activity, such as clearing land for farming, roads, and infrastructure. Our changing climate and increased pollution are also major threats, making migration more dangerous for some species. Experts say reducing the threats to migratory species will require global efforts, as many animals journey across international borders. Before we go, I know we had a little chill move back in over the weekend, but that cool down is very short-lived as we have more spring-like weather in the forecast for the last full week of February. Hope you have time to get outside and enjoy the pleasant weather this week. We'll see you right back here next weekend.